Welcome everybody to episode 2 of the Matt Lab podcast. Thanks for the love on episode 1. Really appreciate it. A lot of people checked it out more than I expected and they enjoyed it. And thank you to Jack for being my first guest. And today I welcome in two guests, the masterminds behind Camelot Studios, Tyler Lahousse. Didn't go over how to say that ahead of time. Hopefully I got that right. And Brandon Conley. Now, these two gentlemen, they need no introduction, but as the host of the show, it's my honor to welcome them in. My guests today have been bringing hard to the YouTube scene for the past 3 years, accumulating more than 12,000 views on their experimental anthology series TETHER PAW, which, quoted directly from them, aims to scare your socks off. Now, these two gentlemen on the other side of my screen do it all themselves. Writing, directing, editing, acting, sound design, you name it. Everything in Tetherpaw is a creative, collaborative effort of filmmaking that is guaranteed to blow you away. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in Camelot Studios. How are you guys doing?
Thanks for having us, man. That was
Yeah,
really
thank you.
good. That was crazy the way
That,
you just did all that.
Off the
that
dome. No, I'm
was
joking. I was reading something, but it's fine.
that was a great intro. Great intro.
No,
10
your
out of
your
10.
your voice, your voice is like perfect for it too. Like that sounded like a radio. Like
Yeah, the
I
radio
don't know, dude.
voice.
Yeah,
Announcer
Thanks,
radio
man.
voice for sure.
I've actually not to get sidetracked, but throughout college I did play-by-play broadcasting, so and I,
Okay.
I
I can
still do
tell.
it. I still do it on the side a little bit. It's a little harder now in the real world, but I appreciate it. But yeah, let's get into it, guys. Brandon, first off, why is your most anticipated movie this year Furiosa?
Um, it's actually wasn't my most anticipated movie. That Dune 2 is actually my most anticipated. I actually have not seen Mad Max Fury Road. I haven't.
Okay.
But
Tyler, I was going for the joke that you mentioned to me earlier. He
oh
didn't pick
No,
up on it.
you want to know what's so funny though? Because actually, Anya Taylor-Joy's in Dune too, so the
yeah.
whole theory still kind of
Okay.
works.
I still
Okay.
enjoy it. Yeah. Yeah.
I heard she was
But
your celebrity crush. I was trying to catch you
she
off guard there,
yes.
but you didn't take the bait at all.
No, I did not take the bait. No, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, she's an icon. So
Nah, she is. But okay, my first real question
all
for
right.
you guys. I hope my intro was as cool as what you guys offer with Camelot Studios. I've really been enjoying what I've been watching. Can you guys just break it down for me? Like explain Camelot Studios in a bit more detail on what it has to offer.
So Camelot for us first started in 2017. We were in high school, obviously our junior year, and we had a pretty good friend group, a pretty big friend group. And one day randomly, I just texted one of my other friends, John, and I was like, "Hey, let's make a parody movie about our mutual friend Devin." And from there, we made four parody style mockumentary superhero parody kind of movies where it was our real life friend, but a fictionalized version of them. Where it was this guy Devin who would hang out with the talking gorilla that was played by our buddy Paul, and my buddy John was there. Brandon was there too, and we all kind of made those goofy movies in high school and such. We named Camelot Studios after a board game we found in like an abandoned house because we just needed like a studio name to release these like homemade movies. We made them on our iPhones and we just grinded until about 2019 we started kind of thinking about Tetherpaw, this like more serious thing that we could conceptually do because everyone thought of us as like not jokey guys, but like we made four kind of funny movies where we didn't take ourselves seriously, but we had a new camera and we wanted to like almost like prove ourselves. We're like, okay, we have this nice camera. What are we gonna do next? And I hung out with Brandon a lot. We were bored one night, and I was just like, hey, do you want to film this thing where you're maybe being stalked, and just get some creative juices flowing? Luckily, Brandon was bored enough to say yes. So
That's awesome. I feel like um trying to start something creative, the most important thing is just literally starting. Like
Mhm.
starting from whatever you can possibly have and then building from there. And that leads right into Tetherpaw, which I think the majority of our conversation is going to be about. Brandon,
yeah.
it's experimental horror anthology series. And that's what you guys have really been producing for the past couple years. What has inspired you guys to go into the horror genre?
It's for us. It's something that we thought we could do, and it well, going back to like the Blind Man's Bluff.
Mhm.
we started shooting that, and we kind of had like no landscape on what we wanted to do. We just knew like stalker thing, kind of like kind of creepy, all that stuff. Then eventually, it just kind of turned to what it is, and along with going like the whole like interdimensional type stuff, where it's like we based it off Twilight Zone almost, where we want just kind of like go different routes and see what worked. And yeah, I mean, yeah, that's
I mean, yeah,
really
I had
it.
written down like Tyler. I don't know if you want to add any to that, but I had written
Yeah.
down like I saw direct inspiration from Twilight Zone. You know, the intro with the text coming down, the black and white images, like the music. Tyler, did you have any other creative inspirations that kind of seeped into your work when you were starting?
I was big into Goosebumps when I was a kid.
Mm.
And I still am to this day. I have such like a nostalgic love and joy that I get from those original books, especially the cover art, and then the show from the 90s was just like a staple of my childhood. And like as I grew older, I watched more and more of the Twilight Zone, which was kind of a thing that my grandparents had on occasionally. And then when I got to middle school, in our I don't know if Brandon was in my art class, but our art teacher in the seventh grade showed us a Twilight Zone episode, and it was just this kind of thing that I was like, hey, this reminds me of like the stuff I liked when I was a kid. Because in middle school, you're kind of like you're starting to think the things you liked when you were a kid like aren't cool anymore. So like even watching Twilight Zone, I was like, this isn't Goosebumps, but it's something that I really enjoyed, like deep down in me. And I've always liked like horror in general. And making horror, a lot of people tend to like in film school and stuff. A lot of the times you see like dramas or you see horror that they make because it's so easy to kind of do on a low budget, or at least attempting to do it on a low budget, because it's a lot of like this guy gets a knock at his door, yada yada yada. There's a serial killer. There's a vampire. It's like such a thing that you can just do whatever you want with, and you can do it on a low budget. You can do it at a high budget. So I always like I love the lower budget stuff, especially like as a kid you watch Goosebumps and you're like, oh my god, this is so scary. As an adult, you're like, oh, this looks really like low budget. But like as a kid, you don't know that, and it's like the older you get and the more like grotesque things you see, whether it's like a Terrifier series or Halloween, Scream, it kind of you age with your taste, and it was something that I always thought was cool. But Tether Paw ended up being like, because it's not kiddish like how Goosebumps was, but it has that kind of teenage tone to it where it's like we swear, where it's like maybe older people wouldn't like it because of the amount of language and vulgar humor and stuff that's in it. But I think people our age would really enjoy it, especially when there's people that you know that are in it. Like you said, you knew Jason, our mutual friend, for a
Hmm.
long time, and it's cool to see someone like him in a horrifying situation. And it's really fun to just see your friends like fighting this otherworldly thing, and that's just always attracted me to horror. It'd be a lot less cool to watch Jason like go on a date with a girl and have it be like no conflict at all, or have Brandon be like mowing his lawn and then realize that his lawnmower broke. Like there's something about horror that like really drives me forward, and creatively I just think it's like an endless type of thing.
Yeah, it can bring like so much of the unexpected, um, more than probably any other genre can. You can go like so many different routes with it. Um, you gave me like so much good stuff to go off there. It kind of reminded me of I was listening to this interview once before. I think it was Matt Damon. He was talking about how sometimes comedy movies, those can end up being the most sad and dark movies, and then horror movies or movies that are intended to be sad have so much room to be hilarious and have a lot of comedic value. And sometimes I think in horror content, it can end up being so funny because sometimes the things seem so ridiculous, and then of course it takes that dark turn towards the end, as it usually always does. Um, uh, whichever one of you wants to speak on this, can you talk about how important in your films in Tetherpaw, how important it is to have versatile themes and genres mixed throughout?
Well, just like think about the concept of a clown. Clowns are supposed to be funny, and so for some reason along the years, clowns have turned into this dark, demented, twisted thing where
I
like
hate
they
clowns.
used to exactly, people don't like them. The It films are really big, Terrifier, and it's like even something like this is gonna sound stupid, but like the Joker is a clown, but now we have him be like this murderer psychopath that like is killing people in comic books and in films. So like there's definitely like something that's funny that's that's inherently funny that ends up being horrifying. There's
Mhm.
something about it. And I think horror and comedy are like blood brothers in a weird way because they work really well with each other.
And it's always adding on to that, it's like changing the expectations of the audience where at one point something can be really funny and then the next moment like someone's dead and it's like, okay, well now we have to deal with this because it kind of brings you back down to earth. And I don't know, it does work together really well.
And
Ha- ha-
if you like a character, he makes you laugh. I feel like you almost care more if something bad happens to him, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. And I was just gonna bring up, I think what makes Tether Paw stand out as opposed to other like horror, like short films that I've seen across the space is that you guys have a really strong focus on your characters. There's almost always seems to be multiple characters. There's a lot of your movies are very dialogue driven. It's about building the relationships between the main characters, the side characters, because then, like you said, when something happens, you feel that emotional impact. Um, so I guess how important or like is the how much of a focus in your mind is building up the characters so then when they get to that twisting point in the film, it's more impactful.
I
It's
mean,
different.
you got it.
It's it's different when it's like it took me a second to like think about it because I think it goes down to us writing certain characters and Brandon's helped me write some stuff and I feel like I'm the main writer and I have Brandon like when he wants to take charge on a story, he's obviously more than welcome to, but I mainly write these characters around a person that I know. So like
Hmm.
even going back to like one of the short films we've made, I'm the main character in it. I decided like if I'm gonna make all my friends do this, I might as well put myself in the ring, show these guys that I'm doing the same thing I'm having them do. And I wrote that character as me, so I could kind of like go to my strengths and my like weaknesses and like really like I don't know because I have never acted really before, so like even doing that, I was like I'm giving myself some dialogue, I'm giving myself some scary stuff, but also like there's going to be bad stuff that happens to me. And like even writing for someone like our buddy Tim Duffy, he's a naturally comedic guy. So I gave him a character that he can be himself with. And it just feels so genuine because it's obviously not Tim. Like if you knew Tim, the stuff Robbie says like isn't exact, but like they're so similar in the sense that like he just fits right into the character like a glove. Even like and then you get to people that are like I cast as villains. None of these guys we're casting as villains are bad guys, but there's something about an actor or a person that I'm like, you could probably play a really good bad guy. I know you had watched our episode called Devin, and the main
Hmm.
bad guy in that, there was nothing about him that's like, oh yeah, you can play this sinister guy. But for some reason, he was in one of our earlier films, and he was so good at like the comedic beats and stuff that I just knew he could turn that charming comedic aspect into something more sinister on a dime. And it's really like who you're working with, and like yeah, it's just Brandon. What do you? Because you've written your stuff too, so I don't know what you think.
My what I try to do is when a story's in front of me, I ask Tyler, who do we have playing these characters? And if I know the person, I try to write to the strengths, like Tyler said, but I also try like I like to give him range so that I'm like, hey, I know you've been playing like you're basically doing yourself this like almost this 20 minutes. Here's 5 minutes where you really need to bring it and you can really show people, oh wow, this person actually can act, they're not just playing themselves.
Yeah,
And um where else are they going? I also the going back to like why we like make characters like likable and stuff like that. I think it's hard to care about something when you don't care about the people in it.
Hmm.
Like the story can be good, it can have like it can be juicy, but if the story is like up here, but then the like the characters that are in it are very bland and very like, yeah, I guess I'll just go over there, like whatever. You're gonna be like, whatever that happens to that guy happens to that guy. Like it is what it is. But if like that person's like charismatic or they just have a good like personality, it's it's easier to be like, dude, you should not go over there. Like as an audience, you're like, don't go through that doorway. Like you know what's behind that doorway. But if it's like someone like that you don't care about, you're like, whatever, dude. Like just go. Oh, I just want to see you die at this point. Like,
And I imagine like that character writing thing, it must come a lot natural when you're working in like this small community with actors that you know. I imagine that in like big blockbusters, it's hard because you write a character, then you got to audition 1,000 people, and it sometimes might not fit exactly what you want. Talk to me just about the whole process of like creating, you go from idea to like the final cut that goes up. Talk to me about that whole process and each of your responsibilities and how you go about executing those.
So typically I'll think of an idea and I'll run it by Brandon. Like, hey, how would you feel about, say, a vampire thing in this style? Brandon gives his feedback on like if he thinks that's a good idea, if that's a good like classic horror thing that we should explore in our universe. And from that point, I'll write a good chunk of the story and I'll send it to Brandon periodically, being like, hey, what do you think of this? And then I write a little bit more. What do you think of this? And he gives his feedback along the way. And then when it gets to filming, it's really about casting the right people, filming on certain days. It's usually the weekend, Saturdays or Sundays or Fridays. And from that point, we film for as long as the script provides us. Right now, we just try to get the best possible quality without
Mhm.
rushing. So, like, no matter how long we have to film, we have to film that long. Which before we've had to have constraints where it's like we only have a filming location for this amount of time. We have to do it in this amount of time. And luckily, it's turned out good for us. But other times we're like, oh, we really wish we could have done this with this location that we just didn't get to do. And then by the time the project's done, I edit it on iMovie. I know people are like iMovie is awful, but I like putting the raw rough cut of it on iMovie without any like intricate cuts or edits or transitions or anything. And then I take that rough cut from iMovie that really is just me putting it all in order. And then we put it on a different software and we do our intricate cuts and edits and such. And Brandon and I have especially recently been doing like we do the sound editing and making sure the sound is fine because since we're such like a low budget thing, it's kind of we didn't have a great microphone in the past. Now we have like a good boom mic and a good microphone that the quality is a lot better for sound. But we had to chip away at the sound and with a lot of editing. And then once we edit it, we have a composer that makes all the music, original music. Every episode that we've done has original music that was made specifically for the episode at hand. And then from that point, if we have time, we'll show it to a friend, see what they think. But it's really just me and Brandon going back and forth on the quality and just making sure it's as perfect as can be. Brandon, I feel like a lot of the time he's like an angel on my shoulder a little bit. There's no
Mhm.
devil yet, but he's just always there to be like, yes, no, yes, no. And I probably spam him way too much when he's at work and I'm doing nothing. But
And then I guess with my responsibilities, basically Tyler will think of an idea, or like sometimes I'll think of an idea. I know it's like we have all of our ideas basically laid out now, but back in the past when we didn't have anything laid out, it was a lot of just bouncing ideas back and forth. And eventually we settled on a few. Tyler will basically write the script on something, but then when he's like locked at something, he'll send me the script and be like, "Hey, can you figure this one out?" Or he'll be like, "Hey, here's like five ideas. Which one of these do you think is the best? I'm not gonna tell you what I prefer." And I'll be like, "This one." He'll be like, "All right, cool. I
It's a
actually like
test.
that." Yeah, he'll be like, "I actually like that one the most too." So I'm glad we're on the same page because that's like the one he wanted to write the most. But and then I'll give him like I'll even like throw him even more ideas. And writing takes a while, but I'm basically just there being like, "Hey, have you tried this?" And he's like, "I don't think it works because of this, that, this." I'm like, "You know what? That's a good point." Like yada yada. I'm like he basically throws ideas at me, and I'm the person that like tells him like, yeah, that could stick. That's not gonna stick. That should
Mhm.
stick, and then he expands on that, and yeah, and then we edit later on after we shoot, and yeah,
How fun has it been to do this with each other?
oh, extremely fun, extremely fun.
I don't think me and Brandon would have been friends if not for like filming. We were like casual friends before. Like we had mutual friends that we went to the same parties, we hung out at school, like the occasional like banter. But when I asked him to help out with our second film as much as I did, because he was in our first film we ever did, but it was more like a casual thing. But when it came time to our making our second film, one of our goofy ones, I was like, all right, Brandon, want to come over and we can go to what store was it, Brandon?
IKEA.
I want to go to IKEA and just like buy some stuff. David Dobrik's vlogs were like huge at the time, and I wanted to buy some white tables to break because I thought I was cool. Um, and then I talked to him about like, hey, I'm thinking about having you be a big guy in the second movie, and then the third movie will be about you. And he was just like, okay, like I don't even know if you were like, where is this coming from? But
I had a
it's been
feeling. I had a feeling.
It's been good because we're very alike, but also we're very different. Like we don't have a lot of similar tastes. Brandon's not even a big horror guy. He's gone seen a lot of horror stuff with me and our mutual friends since then, but I feel like before he'd only seen like classics basically. Like he wouldn't go to every single horror movie that has come out. But now we've kind of pulled him in a little bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna go see Cuckoo day of, where I don't think Brandon would even have watched Cuckoo before.
Probably
And
not in
it's
I
theaters.
won't be there. I will not be there.
come on. But yeah, it's fun because like it's weird because obviously like one day when we're done making movies, it'll be the thing like, is Brandon and I's relationship just making movies? And because we do stuff outside of filming, I don't think so. But at one point I was like, damn, are me and Brandon only friends because of filming? And yeah, it was just interesting because
It's a strictly business relationship.
Some days
at,
it is.
at one point, well, it's because like since we're like the creative heads of Tether Paw, I feel like I take on the boss role and he's like the assistant principal. Like I'm principal, he's assistant principal. Like he's the one that will be more lenient with people, but I'm the one that kind of has to boss them around, if that makes sense.
It's like
Um,
you don't ask mom if you can go out, you go ask dad.
exactly. Everyone would be like, "Hey, Brandon, what do you think?" And I'll be like, "Brandon's gonna give a middle of
Yeah.
the road answer because he's one say yes or no."
Hmm.
Um, it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. We have a very good understanding of each other. I can whenever Brandon shows up to set, I can tell if he's in a good mood or a bad mood. And I'm very grateful when that bad mood turns into a good mood pretty quickly because being on set in a terrible mood, I've been there as well, is just not
Mhm.
fun. And sometimes it feels like we wake up and we have to go film a thing. It's like shit. Do I really want to do this right now? But it's like stick to the grind, lock in, and we're having fun. This will be really cool to look back on like
Hmm.
20, 10, 30 years in the future. And it's like, wow, like my kids will grow up being like, that's Uncle Brandon. And then once they're old enough, they'll be like, holy shit, you guys did that with each other? I'm like, yep. And he's like, that's why we call him Uncle. Like, like, I don't know. Brandon, I'm yapping. You can say some
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, I was gonna say, like, with how many things we filmed, excuse me, how many things we have filmed, it when we show up to set and like we can tell off each other without even talking if each other feel like something's working or not. Like we might
Mhm.
try something, but like based on like our feedback or like our like reactions or like how we just generally are, it's like, hey, this might not be working. Let's just move on to this one thing, or just like let's just like the vibe isn't there. Let's just stop like filming here today because there have been some long days on set where at a certain point it just seems like we're just doing it just to do it and just try to get something done. And honestly, that's where like the worst stuff comes out. So we're just like, you know what? Let's just pick up here next time. Let's just stop here. But it's like an understanding we have, and no, yeah, and like we just like we just like each other's ideas. And so if we, I mean, obviously like we're different enough where like I will like debate him on like, no, this is not a good idea. I won't just be like, yes, of course that's a good idea. Like I also think that, but like, that's where like the good relationship comes because like if I always said yes, I don't think we've always would have the same or the best product we've gotten. And then that goes with him where I'll say something and he'll just be like no, and I'm like, all right,
For
fair
sure.
enough. Like
So
Yeah, because
how do you guys know you? Oh, sorry. Keep going.
no, Brandon's been wrong about stuff. I've been wrong about stuff. And one of the things Brandon's wrong about was wrong about was is one of my favorite Tether Paw endings of all time. And I feel like he's really grown like warmly about it. And I'm glad that like he's right. Like if I'm a yes man, it just doesn't work. If he's a yes man, it doesn't work. We have to be
Mhm.
honest with each other.
And
That's for every
we won't
relationship.
mention we won't mention which one it was, so you guys gotta go watch them all and you'll figure it
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask like, how do you guys know you have something good? Is it just like a like an unspoken thing?
Um so the day of filming, usually the first day of filming, I can always tell, which is really weird because like usually that's not the case where it's like it's almost like a love at first sight sort of thing.
Mhm.
I feel like once I see an actor honing in on a performance, it just clicks at like, yeah, this whole thing's going to be really great. If we have a really cool location, it like really ties it together too, where you're like, wow, this is going to be really cool. Like we're at a cool place. But like there have been days filming where it's just like yeah, this is gonna be something else. This is gonna be something cool. And I don't know, because like I feel like when we write stuff, if it's a unique and different idea on paper, it could be totally different than you trying to execute it in person on a camera. But I feel like when Brandon and I know, we kind of like lock eyes with each other and we're like, this is good. And we're excited about the scripts that we know are gonna be really good too. Not that we have like shitty scripts, because like sometimes the scripts are just better than others. But yeah, I don't know. Brandon, do you ever have a moment where you're like, yeah, it's gonna be really good?
Typically it's not sometimes it's not the first day of filming, but it's like say if we have like an ensemble cast or we have like a lot of people on a cast and we get all of them there in one day, like for example, like Apostles like Heroes, when Joe showed up to set and after I had written Marshall and I was said I really hope he could fit Marshall, and then he showed up to set and I could not envision anyone else playing Marshall than him. And when he started acting as Marshall, I was like, that's my Marshall. And
Yeah.
then everything just kind of started clicking. I said, this could, if everything lines up, like if this character acts the way that it's written, and this character, and like in the we get the nice shots and all that stuff, like it's it just like it's like all the pieces just falling together. And if
Mhm.
like you get a few of those when you're writing a script, like sometimes you can just tell like this is like not the climax, but this is a really like important part. And I had this like shot envisioned in my head and like and all that jazz. And then when you finally get that shot and you're seeing it back on the camera, you're like, yep, yep, it's all
You
coming
got it.
together.
Yeah.
Like
Seeing the script to screen, as Brandon was putting it, is like a really magical moment. Like just
I
seeing it all
imagine, man.
come to life. It's crazy.
We got 8 minutes left, and there's so many things I want to talk about. So I'm just gonna rattle off the ones that are sticking in my head right now. Throughout this
mhm.
conversation, um, I wanted to ask you about the importance of using the right terms. Like you call it, you guys, directors, writers, actors. You call it a set. Sometimes I feel like if it's a creative project you're doing on your own, there's I don't know how to word it. There's sometimes like a bit of like insecurity about it, and you don't know like, oh, is it embarrassing to like be so like professional about it? How important is it? Do you think it is to like use those proper terms when you're talking about your projects?
It's super important because like people look at what we do and they think it's a hobby, which it is a hobby. Like Brandon and I have full-time day jobs where we go
Mhm.
and work our butts off, and I have a whole family at home that I have to provide and take care of. But there's something so important about having worth in life, and not saying like this gives me or Brandon worth, but it is a hobby that makes us happy. And if I'm making something that is a short film, that makes me a director. If Brandon writes a script that we then film and release, that makes him a writer. Just because it's not Hollywood doesn't delegitimize what we do, because there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And like Brandon's house,
100%.
if we film in his garage, Brandon's garage is a set, because it's not a garage. There's going to be no cars
And
pulling
we've
in.
built sets
We're
before.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
No, yeah, yeah. I just wanted to mention that because I feel like it's so important to create that sort of like confidence and that sort of professionalism like around the sets and the environment, especially if you're bringing in new actors to be a part of
Mhm.
projects. Um, I mentioned you guys use the black and white shots. You have your own music, which is incredible. I don't know how much we'll be able to talk about that in our time frame, but that's incredible. You guys provide your own music. How long did it take for you guys to establish your own filmmaking traits? I noticed a lot with the cameras. It's a lot of like quick cutting. It's close, zoomed in shots. Did it take you a while to establish your sort of things that make this tether paw?
Kind of just because like in our first batch of short films we made, we call them episodes because really we made five and then we just made six, and now we're slowly working on four more. And
Hmm.
it's really special kind of over time being like what works, what doesn't, what camera angles I like seeing, what camera angles Brandon likes, what camera angles our friends like. And it's the kind of thing that like we do what we can with our budget. And sometimes those interesting amateur shots enhance our budget, but also give us our special personal flair. And I know there's stuff Brandon really likes incorporating that we've done multiple times. And it's just kind of like my style, his style. They've kind of molded into one horrific black and white baby.
Yeah, I always enjoy because Tyler's typically the one on the camera, but I'll be like, Tyler, you shot the shot. Like, and like there's multiple shots in like different episodes where I'm like, yeah, I thought of that shot, and the shot like turned out really well. I'm like, I always in my head, I'm like, let's do that shot next time. Like it's like a wide shot, people going across the screen, like stuff like that. I'm like,
That
let's do
was
that
me.
again. Yeah, I'm like that. I'm like, I thought of that shot.
Brandon, I feel like for filmmakers, like especially with limited access to equipment, limited
Mhm.
time, limited sets, having limitations can often open the door for lots of creativity. Have you found that in your work with Tetherpaw?
Oh, always, because we're not dealing with like a big budget set, but like well like it makes you think of the environment you're in, and you have to go, all right, I have to use what I have here. So it's like, all right, let's get the angle so we can like go up the staircase a little better, instead of like on an actual set you might be like, let's cut this floor out and let's just drop the camera in. It's like, no,
Mhm.
like Tyler or me will be on the ground like facing up, um or some like one of my there's a prop in Legend of the Pumpkin Man, which I'm not gonna say if anyone hasn't seen, but we had one of our friends make it, and I think it looks great. And oh, come on. And
Oh, no
it,
way.
and we had one of our friends make it, and it's probably one of my favorite props we've ever done. And I think if we were big budget, it just, I don't know, it's just, I think it would have devalued like the whole thing. I think it adds, I think because we have such a small budget, it adds value to everything else that a big film studio would just, it's just nothing to them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you're not expecting this big thing like what Brandon's describing. And even like I'm not gonna say I've sacrificed my life for some shots, but there have been some shots that if I take 1 inch further, I will fall off a ledge and I will be seriously hurt. And it's just like if you wanna commit, like I've been on the roof of a car before. Like it's just like you have to go these places to really get the shot that you envision in your head. Because if you don't, you're gonna regret not doing it.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely think sometimes big budgets, these big film factories, like they've been doing it for so long. They have a formula, and they're sometimes probably afraid to veer off the formula because they know that's what brings in the ratings, that's what brings in like the money. But with you guys, you have so much creative freedom. You can go any direction and it's always going to be Tetherpaw. We only have 3 minutes left. This has been a great conversation. I really wanted to like dive into all the specific films. I won't have time for it, but you guys go check them all out. They're all amazing. Tyler, I asked Brandon this, so I got to ask you, what's your most anticipated movie coming out this year
My most anticipated.
that hasn't already come
Probably
out?
probably Cuckoo, just because my girl Hunter Shaver's in it. But also, I really excited for Long Legs,
Hmm.
Nosferatu, um, Trap, the new M Night Shyamalan film. Basically a bunch of scary stuff. I'm excited for Deadpool and Wolverine, although I'm like optimistic. But I grew up loving the X-Men so much that like seeing Hugh Jackman back like doesn't not excite me. I'd be stupid to say that it
You
doesn't.
watch
And it's just
X-Men 97?
yes, sir, I sure did.
Brandon, what about you?
No, not
Ah,
me.
get out of here, man.
I know.
It was amazing. It was
I've
amazing.
heard good things. I've heard good things.
I'm a big fan of animation. I like cartoons. I like anime and stuff like that. So it hit hard for me. But guys, we'll wrap
Brandon
this
is
up.
what.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
sorry. This is
Go ahead. Go ahead.
uh, Brandon is what the kids these days call a gooner.
Oh, okay. All right. He's one of those. All right, we're getting into the brain rot category.
This
Let's
guy.
go back. Let's go back. You guys recently announced this is your third and final season of Tetherpaw. And
Yep.
I know I can't get anything out of you guys about spoilers. But what can we expect and what does the future hold?
You can expect 4 new short films from us, and one feature length film to end Tether Paw.
Brandon, you want to add
Eh,
to that?
Better quality. Honestly, I think some of our best scripts. Um, great
Our
acting.
best sets. We've got some real locations we're really excited to go film at.
And I think I mean, quality is going to shine because, like Tyler said earlier, we are taking our time with these. We are not setting ourselves a time constraint for any of these. So however
Hmm.
long they take, and it's kind of like it's kind of passion at that point.
Heard that,
We've
people.
we've always envisioned a beginning, middle, and end, and we got to nail the end. So that's really where our hearts are at right now.
All right, Tetherpaw fans, you can expect something good to close us out. Tyler, Brandon, thank you so much for this conversation. I had a great time.
Uh,
Thank you,
thank you.
man.